And I want to welcome everybody to our morning mindset, Think and Grow Rich, where we read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich section and discuss. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. So glad you could join me. And let's get started. Top of page 43 begins. The event chosen for this illustration dates back to 1900, when the United States Steel Corporation was being formed. As you read the story, keep in mind these fundamental facts, and you will understand how ideas have been converted into huge fortunes. First, the huge United States Steel Corporation was born in the mind of Charles M. Schwab, in the form of an idea he had created through his imagination. Second, he mixed faith with his idea. Third, he formulated a plan for the transformation of his idea into physical and financial reality. Fourth, he put his plan into action with his famous speech at the University Club. Fifth, he applied and followed through on his plan with persistence and backed it with firm decision until it had been fully carried out. Sixth, he prepared the way for success by a burning desire for success. If you are one of those who have often wondered how great fortunes are accumulated, the story of the creation of the United States Steel Corporation will be enlightening. If you have any doubt that men can think and grow rich, this story should dispel that doubt, because you can plainly see in the story of the United States Steel the application of a major portion of the 13 principles described in this book. This astounding description of the power of an idea was dramatically told by John Lowell in the New York World Telegram, with whose courtesy it is here reprinted. A pretty after-dinner speech for $1 billion. When, on the evening of December 12, 1900, some 80 of the nation's financial nobility gathered in the banquet hall of the University Club on Fifth Avenue to do honor to a young man from out of the West, not half a dozen of the guests realized they were to witness the most significant episode in American industrial history. J. Edward Simmons and Charles Stuart Smith, their hearts full of gratitude for the lavish hospitality bestowed on them by Charles M. Schwab during a recent visit to Pittsburgh, had arranged the dinner to introduce the 38-year-old steelman to Eastern banking society. But they didn't expect him to stampede the convention. They warned him, in fact, that the bosoms within, I think that's supposed to be bosoms, that the bosoms within New York stuffed shirts would not be responsive to oratory, and that if he didn't want to bore the Stillhans and Harrimans and Vanderbilts, he had better limit himself to 15 or 20 minutes of polite vaporings and let it go at that. Even John Pierpont Morgan, sitting on the right hand of Schwab, as became his imperial dignity, intended to grace the banquet table with his presence only briefly, and so far as the press and public were concerned, the whole affair was of so little moment that no mention of it found its way into print the next day. So the two hosts and their distinguished guests ate their way through the usual 7 or 8 courses. There was little conversation, and what there was of it was restrained. Few of the bankers and brokers had met Schwab, whose career had flowered along the banks of the Monongahela, and none knew him well. But before the evening was over, they, and with them Money Master Morgan, were to be swept off their feet, and $1 billion baby, the United States Steel Corporation, was to be conceived. It is perhaps unfortunate, for the sake of history, that no record of Charles Schwab's speech at the dinner ever was made. He repeated some parts of it at a later date during a similar meeting of Chicago bankers, and still later, when the government brought suit to dissolve the Steel Trust. He gave his own version from the witness stand of the remarks that stimulated Morgan into a frenzy of financial activity. It is probable, however, that it was a homely speech, somewhat ungrammatical, for the niceties of language never bothered Schwab, full of epigram and threaded with wit. But aside from that, it had a galvanic force and effect upon the 5 billions of estimated capital that was represented by the diners. After it was over and the gathering was still under its spell, although Schwab had talked for 90 minutes, Morgan led the orator to a recessed window where, dangling their legs from the high, uncomfortable seat, they talked for an hour more. The magic of the Schwab personality had been turned on full force. But what was more important and lasting was the full-fledged, clear-cut program he laid down for the aggrandizement of steel. Many other men had tried to interest Morgan in slapping together a steel trust after the pattern of the biscuit, wire and hoop, sugar, rubber, whiskey, oil, or chewing gum combinations. John W. Gates, the gambler, had urged it, but Morgan distrusted him. The Moore boys, Bill and Jim, Chicago stock jobbers who had glued together a match trust and a cracker corporation, had urged it and failed. Albert H. Gary, the sanctimonious country lawyer, wanted to foster it, but he wasn't big enough to be impressive. Until Schwab's elegance took J.P. Morgan to the heights from which he could visualize the solid results of the most daring financial undertaking ever conceived, the project was regarded as a delirious dream of easy money crackpots. The financial magnetism that began a generation ago to attract thousands of small and sometimes inefficiently managed companies into large and competition-crushing combinations had become operative in the steel world through the devices of that jovial business pirate, John W. Gates. Gates already had formed the American Steel and Wire Company out of a chain of small concerns, and together with Morgan had created the Federal Steel Company. The National Tube and American Bridge Companies were two more Morgan concerns, and the Moore brothers had forsaken the match and cookie business to form the American Group, tin plate, steel hoop, sheet steel, and the National Steel Company. But by the side of Andrew Carnegie's gigantic vertical trust, a trust owned and operated by 53 partners, those other combinations were picayune. They might combine to their heart's content, but the whole lot of them couldn't make a dent in the Carnegie organization, and Morgan knew it. The eccentric old Scot knew it too. From the magnificent heights of Skibo Castle, he had viewed first with amusement and then with resentment the attempts of Morgan's smaller companies to cut his business. When the attempts became too bold, Carnegie's temper was translated into anger and retaliation. He decided to duplicate every mill owned by his rivals. Hitherto, he hadn't been interested in wire, pipe, hoops, or sheet. Instead, he was content to sell such companies the raw steel and let them work it into whatever shape they wanted. Now, with Schwab as his chief and able lieutenant, he planned to drive his enemies to the wall. So it was that in the speech of Charles M. Schwab, Morgan saw the answer to his problem of combination. A trust without Carnegie, giant of them all, would be no trust at all. A plum pudding, as one writer said, without the plums. Schwab's speech on the night of December 12, 1900, undoubtedly carried the inference, though not the pledge, that the vast Carnegie enterprise could be brought under the Morgan tent. He talked of the world future for steel, of reorganization for efficiency, of specialization, of the scrapping of unsuccessful mills and concentration of effort on the flourishing properties, of economies in the ore traffic, of economies in overhead and administrative departments, of capturing foreign markets. More than that, he told the buccaneers among them wherein lay the errors of their customary piracy. Their purposes, he inferred, had been to create monopolies, raise prices, pay themselves fat dividends out of privilege. Schwab condemned the system in his heartiest manner. The short-sightedness of such a policy, he told his hearers, lay in the fact that it restricted the market in an era when everything cried for expansion. By cheapening the cost of steel, he argued, an ever-expanding market would be created. More uses for steel would be devised, and a goodly portion of the world trade would be captured. Actually, though he did not know it, Schwab was an apostle of modern mass production. So the dinner at the University Club came to an end. Morgan went home to think about Schwab's rosy predictions. Schwab went back to Pittsburgh to run the steel business for Andrew Carnegie, while Gary and the rest went back to their stock tickers to fiddle around in anticipation of the next move. It was not long coming. It took Morgan about 1 week to digest the feast of reason Schwab had placed before him. When he had assured himself that no financial indigestion was to result, he sent for Schwab and found that young man rather coy. Mr. Carnegie, Schwab indicated, might not like it if he found his trusted company president had been flirting with the Emperor of Wall Street, the street upon which Carnegie was resolved never to tread. Then it was suggested by John W. Gates, the go-between, that if Schwab happened to be in the Bellevue Hotel in Philadelphia, J.P. Morgan might also happen to be there. When Schwab arrived, however, Morgan was inconveniently ill at his New York home. And so, on the elder man's pressing invitation, Schwab went to New York and presented himself at the door of the financier's library. Now, certain economic historians have professed the belief that from the beginning to the end of the drama, the stage was set by Andrew Carnegie, that the dinner to Schwab, the famous speech, the Sunday night conference between Schwab and the Money King were events arranged by the canny Scot. The truth is exactly the opposite. When Schwab was called in to consummate the deal, he didn't even know where the little boss, as Andrew was called, would so much as listen to an offer to sell, particularly to a group whom Andrew regarded as being endowed with something less than holiness. But Schwab did take into the conference with him, in his own handwriting, 6 sheets of copper plate figures, representing to his mind the physical worth and the potential earning capacity of every steel company he regarded as an essential star in the new metal firmament. 4 men pondered over these figures all night. The chief, of course, was Morgan, steadfast in his belief in the divine right of money. With him was his aristocratic partner, Robert Bacon, a scholar and a gentleman. The third was John W. Gates, whom Morgan scorned as a gambler and used as a tool. The fourth was Schwab, who knew more about the processes of making and selling steel than any whole group of men then living. Throughout that conference, the Pittsburghers' figures were never questioned. If he said a company was worth so much, then it was worth that much and no more. He was insistent, too, upon including in the combination only those concerns he nominated. He had conceived a corporation in which there would be no duplication, not even to satisfy the greed of friends who wanted to unload their companies upon the broad Morgan shoulders. Thus he left out, by design, a number of the larger concerns upon which the walruses and carpenters of Wall Street had cast hungry eyes. When dawn came, Morgan rose and straightened his back. Only one question remained. "Do you think you can persuade Andrew Carnegie to sell?" he asked. "I can try," said Schwab. "If you can get him to sell, I will undertake the matter," said Morgan. So far, so good. But would Carnegie sell? How much would he demand? Schwab thought about $320 million. What would he take payment in? Common or preferred stock, bonds, cash? Nobody could raise $1/3 billion in cash. There was a golf game in January on the frost-cracking heath of the St. Andrews Links in Westchester, with Andrew bundled up in sweaters against the cold and Charlie talking volubly as usual to keep his spirits up. But no word of business was mentioned until the pair sat down in the cozy warmth of the Carnegie cottage nearby. Then, with the same persuasiveness that had hypnotized 80 millionaires at the University Club, Schwab poured out the glittering promises of retirement and comfort of untold millions to satisfy the old man's social caprices. Carnegie capitulated, wrote a figure on a slip of paper, handed it to Schwab and said, "All right, that's what we'll sell for." The figure was approximately $400 million and was reached by taking the $320 million mentioned by Schwab as a basic figure and adding to it $80 million to represent the increased capital value over the previous 2 years. Later, on the deck of a transatlantic liner, the Scotsman said ruefully to Morgan, "I wish I had asked you for $100 million more." "If you had asked for it, you'd have gotten it," Morgan told him cheerfully. There was an uproar, of course. A British correspondent cabled that the foreign steel world was appalled by the gigantic combination. President Hadley of Yale declared that unless trusts were regulated, the country might expect an emperor in Washington within the next 25 years. But that able stock manipulator, Keene, went at his work of shoving the new stock at the public so vigorously that all the excess water estimated by some at nearly $600 million, was absorbed in a twinkling. So Carnegie had his millions, and the Morgan Syndicate had $62 million for all its trouble, and all the boys, from Gates to Gary, had their millions. The 38-year-old Schwab had his reward. He was made president of the new corporation and remained in control until 1930. The dramatic story of big business, which you have just finished, was included in this book because it is a perfect illustration of the method by which desire can be transmuted into its physical equivalent. I imagine some readers will question the statement that a mere intangible desire can be converted into its physical equivalent. Doubtless, some will say, you cannot convert nothing into something. The answer is in the story of United States Steel. That giant corporation was created in the mind of one man. The plan by which the organization was provided with the steel mills that gave it financial stability was the creation of the mind of the same man. His faith, his desire, his imagination, his persistence were the real ingredients that went into United States Steel. The steel mills and mechanical equipment acquired by the corporation after it had been brought into legal existence were incidental. But careful analysis will disclose the fact that the appraised value of the properties acquired by the corporation increased in value by an estimated $600 million by the mere transaction which consolidated them under one management. In other words, Charles M. Schwab's idea, plus the faith with which he conveyed it to the minds of J.P. Morgan and the others, was marketed for a profit of approximately $600 million. Not an insignificant sum for a single idea. What happened to some of the men who took their share of the millions of dollars of profit made by this transaction is a matter with which we are not now concerned. The important feature of the astounding achievement is that it serves as unquestionable evidence of the soundness of the philosophy described in this book, because this philosophy was the warp and the hoof of the entire transaction. Moreover, the practicability of the philosophy has been established by the fact that the United States Steel Corporation prospered and became one of the richest and most powerful corporations in America, employing thousands of people, developing new uses for steel, and opening new markets, thus proving that the $600 million in profit which the Schwab idea produced was earned. Riches begin in the form of thought. The amount is limited only by the person in whose mind the thought is put into motion. Faith removes limitations. Remember this when you are ready to bargain with life for whatever it is that you ask as your price for having passed this way. Remember also that the man who created the United States Steel Corporation was practically unknown at the time. He was merely Andrew Carnegie's Man Friday, until he gave birth to his famous idea. After that, he quickly rose to a position of power, fame, and riches. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are still with me. Wow.
That was a long one.
Yeah, it was.
A deep one.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys are still with me. My apologies for stumbling a little bit. I got a little dry-mouthed and then ran across some words that were misspelled. It's like, oh, in that PDF. But you're right. You're right. Very powerful. Very powerful. So welcome all the new people who've come in. Yes, hardball. That is why I wanted to read it in its entirety. I don't want to skip over any pages. I think it's important that we have the story and the details as are given to us to see how this happened and how we can do it ourselves. And Dolores, story around it is wonderful and powerful and shows we can create our own reality. Yes. And that is cementing for me something that I've been having difficulty with, which is, can I really think myself there? And it has to do with money and how we view money. At least it does with me. What's the difference if I put on another 2 zeros? It becomes a big deal to me, and it shouldn't be. And that's what the story is telling me, is that it doesn't need to be a bigger deal because there are additional zeros. Anybody that would like to join into the open seat to share your comments, your thoughts about the reading, what you think, how you've applied it, makes sense, doesn't make sense, doesn't matter. The whole point is that we all get an opportunity to share what we think. Feel free. The seat is open.
And Charlene, I want to share this quote. It was at the end of the reading in my copy.
Mm-hmm.
There are no limitations to the mind except those we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought.
Yes. And that is just simply a paraphrase of the small paragraph, right?
Right.
Now, what struck
me...
As I
always say, that the glass ceiling is the glass ceiling is self-installed.
Oh, what a great saying. I love that. So we have Dolores coming in. Welcome, Dolores.
Hi there.
And then we have Eric. Hi. Hi to the both of you. Welcome. Welcome. Dolores,
good morning.
Share your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a blab there Saturday morning. It's sort of in relation to this topic of getting past our comfort zone and stepping into our power. And I'm such a believer that we actually can do that. You know, the only thing that limits us, as Sean said, is our own limitations that we put on ourselves. There is a glass ceiling we have that we can break through, and I'm such a firm believer in that. And I love working with children and showing them how to, from a very young age, to not create those ceilings and to just realize that they actually can do anything they want to.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that, Dolores.
Hey.
That's powerful, Eric, to reach the young.
Yeah, because I have two young boys myself, 6 and 11, and my 11-year-old has always been so sensitive, and I work with him a lot on this. And thank goodness I finally can see breakthroughs now where he realizes he doesn't have to be what other people tell him he is, you know, which I think is
what a gift you're giving him.
I just love it's a passion of mine. So yeah, you know, it's creating our own reality, isn't it? And yeah, it is. It's just a passion. I think it's easy to do it when you love the topic.
For sure.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Hello, Eric. I can't hear you. And I don't have you muted this time. That happened once. I was like, oh, I didn't say a word. I just unmuted.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Now we can hear you.
All right. Had the wrong microphone. So yeah, a lot of what she said resonated as well. And faith isn't so much religious as it is the confidence that you can go out and do those things and not be afraid of failing. And just, if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And to go and go for those things. And I think a lot of what his book says is a combination of faith, desire, matching the things up that you like to do, and then having the faith to follow through and being able to do it and know that you can do that. So I like that passage. I like the story of the steel mill. I haven't heard it in many, many years, but one of the things that I started hearing that I probably didn't recognize the first time through was all the government intervention and all the regulation that they were imposing on this company and how they adapted to that, because I'm going through those things today and I never would have imagined having to even think about government intervention and hearing it back then and how they approached it then. And we're still seeing the repercussions of that today with the SEC and all these things today. We're struggling because of the things that happened back then, and you know, it's interesting.
Good point.
And they're always.
But I think what I'm hearing from you, Eric, is that that's not stopping you.
No, it's not. It's making it more difficult, but it's not going to stop us, right? Exactly, because we have the desire to follow through, and we know we can do it if we learn the rules and follow the rules. There's a lot of rules now, obviously, more than even they had to deal with, but you know, you put the people in place that can help you with those things, and you know that you can do it.
So there's two things that really popped out at me. You had one man who wasn't in a position of ownership, right? He was just his man Friday, which tells me he was his executive assistant, you know, the go-to guy to make sure things get done. But, you know, I don't have to worry about it because he's going to take care of it for me. You have this one guy who's got an idea and he has the vision of what a combined forces could be. And he's very selective in which companies need to be a part of this. He had already pre-selected them. He was very clear on what was going to transpire, on what needed to transpire, so that he could tell the story very clearly. And I think that had an impact on the effectiveness, on the catching the imagination of those involved, was because there was no wishy-washiness. It was very clear, and it involved a lot of money you could pocket. But also, it from what I'm remembering in the story, it appealed to these men's and businessmen, the business thinking of clean cut processes, of getting rid of the waste, getting lean, and doing business well. So you're producing a product, which to him is providing a raw material. You're producing something of quality. And then the final thing that really struck me was the one statement that says, remember this, when you are ready to bargain with life for whatever it is that you ask as your price for having passed this way. So whatever you think, put into motion, faith removes those limitations, but you're still making a trade-off. So it's be mindful. I'm not even going to say be careful. I'm going to say be mindful of what you wish for or what you pray for, because you're going to have to give something in return. And that statement is telling me I'm going to be paying something, and is it worth it? I'm done. That's what I had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was inspiring, and I think Schwab was the person that could execute on that Disney on Friday, so to speak. He knew that was the guy. He had the vision of how to create these structures, and he knew that if he put the right ideas and it could inspire him, he would be able to do this. Obviously, that he was successful, and he had many things he didn't discuss in there that you could read later. That struggles to get that done. It wasn't as easy as we all know, right?
Well, now I'm trying to imagine the level of stress and the prep work. The prep work before I go in to give that speech.
Right.
And to be relaxed, so that my vision can be conveyed without the schmaltzy sales kind of, carnival barker thing. Yeah, I'm envisioning that, and I'm envisioning him out on the golf course with Morgan, and just, it's just a couple of $100 million. You'll come out a couple of $100 million, trying. That's what I'm envisioning, being so sure of what. I guess what I'm seeing out of that story is that there wasn't a whole lot of convincing that needed to happen. He answered the questions that were presented to him, right?
That he said it would happen would be enough, right? That he would follow through on the things that he always said that he would follow through on. So when he said what we're going to do, there was no question on whether that was going to get done. He knew that was going to get done. It was just a matter of how you're going to do it, and then having faith to know, as a group, we have the right people together, inspire the right people. We're going to do this thing, and yeah, I think that's powerful. I think that's powerful for everything. Yeah.
Well, and I think you mentioned the clarity he had, Charlene.
Yes.
He was clear on, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and because of that clarity, he had confidence, and that came out in his voice when he spoke. I was actually just reading a story, and it talked about somebody who was changing the way of pricing and the way of dealing with their clients, and when they first did it, they didn't have that confidence, and so their voice would drop off a little bit, and so they lost some of the deals. But when they got to the point to speak confidently about what they were offering and be confident about the price they were offering it for, people said, okay, when do you need the check? It's a big shift. If we have the confidence, and that confidence comes from being that absolute clarity.
And being prepared. And
not being afraid of, because it is about connecting with the right people. And sometimes we know we need to connect with this powerful, influential person, but we're afraid of it. We're like, oh my gosh, they won't talk to little me. But to be clear, be confident, and say, I need to talk to this guy, and I need to do whatever it takes to bring him on board. And like you guys were saying, this is the way I see this going. This is what it's going to cost. And then it was just a matter of who's on board. Here's what it is. Here's what it's going to cost. Are you on it? Are you in?
Well, that's the way I when I read it, that's the way I saw it presented. But I thought it was interesting that there was sneaking suspicion that Schwab had been put up to doing this by Carnegie. That, you do this, you be my front man. And what a coup that would have been had it been real, and the story would have been Carnegie's success at reeling in his rivals and his competition. But instead, it was Schwab. Again, that's what strikes me, is this is the fella that had the idea. He didn't have any money of his own. He understood money, and he understood the bringing together, so that he envisioned the final product, knew who would qualify to participate, because that's who would take it further. Because my thinking is that had the other guys gone in, the boys from Chicago, the other ones that just didn't qualify, they weren't a part of it. Had they been a part of it, I don't know that American Steel Company would have been what it is. They would have brought the
certainly would have been. There would have been so much corruption.
Well, they would have muddied the waters with the mills and the businesses that weren't doing so great, which is not what Schwab was looking for. It was very specific about who qualified to be purchased, who qualified to be a part of the combination. And it wasn't the ones that were failing. It was the ones that had strengths to bring to the table, because the failures were going to be the anchors. Am I right? They would have sucked money right out.
And what
was that?
Something like that. You want the sales and not the anchors.
Exactly.
The ones that are going to propel it forward, not.
Come back in, Dolores. You're welcome to try. The seat's open. Anybody's welcome to try. If you can't, you can't. I'll boot you out, and then you could try again. Connections are iffy.
And when you were talking,
I won't stay for too long.
When you were talking, Charlene, about conspiracy theory that that Carnegie put Schwab up to this, that he was just the front man, isn't it? What I was thinking was, isn't it interesting that most people at large, when somebody does something like that, they come out of nowhere with this big idea, they pull it together and come out the other side.
Well, it can't be just one person that did that.
Brand success. That the first thing we start saying, it had to be one of these power players that he's just the front man.
Well, it can't be an ordinary person
like that
you
acronym,
or me,
hater.
Right?
Right.
Isn't that what's the impetus of that thought is? It can't be somebody like you or me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have done it. Which, of course, should be the halogen light bulb that says, well, yeah, so now why aren't you?
Yeah.
Right?
Learning or believing that we have the power within us all the time.
Yes.
Well, and it's really a mindset shift, because a lot, we're conditioned in a lot of cases to have this fixed mindset that I'm born with these skills, these talents, these gifts, and that's all there is. I can be really good at those things, but if I try to do something that's outside that, then I can't do it, because that's the fixed mindset. But the growth mindset says what we're talking about. I can take that ceiling out. I can achieve whatever I put my mind to, and I have the faith to pursue.
And I think the key is what I keep hearing over and over and over and over and over again is the one thing I put my mind to. It's not that none of us are saying you can achieve everything. It's the anything. It's the single thing that's in mind, the vision that you have that you want to achieve. That's what is your purpose and what you're moving towards.
I think that's a good point. That desire, you can't want everything. You can't be doing this, and this. you have a design, you want to do this, and you're going to do this, and whatever it takes to get this done is what you're going to be able to do. And if you start focusing on other things, that will never get done. So I think that focus that you're talking about is always critical.
Absolutely, Eric, and to find out in the first instance what it is that you actually want, I think as well. If we don't know what we actually want, we can't get there.
Well, that's going to take. You know what I thought of right away, Dolores, when you said that was that line in the reading, because I have to trade off something. I'm going to have to pay by replacing something with the vision that when I select that, other things are going to have to go to the wayside. They're just going to have to, because they looked great and they looked like fun, but they're going to have to be set aside.
If they're not in alignment with what you want.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say they're distractions. They're not going to help you get that focus on what it is that you need to get done. So they're little roads that you're going to go off on, and at the end of the day, you'll get none of it done because you're missing that focus. I'm always guilty of that.
Gary Leland in the comments section asks, so is it all that uncommon to have the success mindset? How common is it? I have to tell you that it's been a struggle for me to find people to surround myself with who have the success mindset in my area. Now, I've done it, but it's taken me over 7 years.
Isn't it great to have Blab?
and those are people I can count on this many hands. But I found them. And yes, Dolores, that's why I'm loving Blab, is I am connecting with people like you and like Eric and, with Don. Don made it. Good to see you, Don. And Samantha, and of course, Sean. He actually should be at the top of the list because he's one of the first I connected with. And others that, where's Edwin, right? Where's the regular? Where's Edwin? Edwin's always on here.
That's interesting you said that. It is uncommon because you're right. I've lived in a lot of places throughout the world, and certain locations attract more people. Like I lived in New York City. There were a lot more success-focused minded people there. And I just lived in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Zero.
Lancaster?
Yeah.
Well, you're surrounded by Amish farm country.
I understand.
It's a different. You're talking a whole different mindset culture.
But you see it, right? So now I'm here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I just moved here last week. I don't know what to expect yet, but Blab, I think this big world of the internet is opening it up to where we can find other like-minded people and surround ourselves. I have a team of people in my company. They're all over the world, and they're all success-minded type people that I would not be able to find in the location that I was at, but was able to go out and locate them through Facebook, Twitter, other social media mechanisms. So, yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
And it's great. You have a choice then if you want to join a Blab. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You have a choice.
Please.
You can pick Blabs that you actually have an interest in. Nobody's forcing you. You don't have to join a Blab if it doesn't interest you, but the ones that do, so then you know that you're talking to the people that are at the same mindset as you.
That's right. Isn't that great? I know. I'm only been on a week, but this is great.
Yeah, same here.
So Gary asks, is there a difference having a success mindset and being successful?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Can you be successful without a success mindset?
Yeah, I think that's what he's asking.
The accidental success? I think so.
Oh, yeah, all the time. You see all the time in corporations, people get promoted.
Yes. All right, Gary, you're just going to have to hop in, my friend. Because we're doing the yes, no. I have no idea what the
I'm going to pop out as well to let somebody else in. Okay, guys, chat soon. I'll stay in the comments for a while.
I'm going to take off too. Let somebody else jump in and talk.
It's up to you. Up to you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us, Gary. So could you please expand on what you were asking?
Yeah, you're talking about this success mindset. So it's difference from being, and then you said it's been hard for you to find people with success mindsets. You could count them all in one hand, basically. I'm just wondering, does that mean there's a difference from people who are successful versus people who have successful mindsets? I mean, I live in a neighborhood with 70 houses, and every house costs $500,000 in here. So I know that I can walk out the door and there's 70 successful people in my neighborhood. So are you saying those 70 people do not have success mindsets?
No, I'm
just
saying
in the rare clump of the world that has.
Well, you could be in a rare clump. The area I'm in is the primary mindset is it's a $12 an hour city, meaning that be happy with the $12 an hour job.
So then it has a lot
Just
to
be
do
happy with what you got. Just
then
be
it has
happy
a lot
with
to do with where you live, is what you're
environment has a lot to do with it. And I've lived and personally, I've traveled the world and I've been around this country and I've lived in various areas. So I recognized the mindset when I got here as one that I've been working now to get my husband and I out of. But there were reasons why we moved here, and those reasons now have resolved, and we're going to be moving on. But in that, I've been able to find people who have the mindset that they want to build something. They're willing to do what needs to be done to get it built without harming others on the path to building it. That essentially is the success mindset that I'm attracted to. And that is part of the principles that Napoleon Hill gives us, that the purpose is not to harm others in our way to success. It is to be successful, and that's the goal. And if we, bringing people along with us, we can't do it by ourselves, is also the goal. So I have found people like that. I intentionally sought them out, and it took me time because there are accidental successes, and after 7 years, they're no longer around. So I'm going to go to Sean's on the sustainability, So that's my viewpoint. You can share more, Gary. Others can jump in and share what they think about. Is there a difference?
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about harming people while you become successful. I don't think I've ever harmed anyone while I became successful. I just get up every day to go make money. I mean, not to harm anyone. I don't think I do. I do my own deal.
You don't set out intentionally to harm somebody.
I don't think I've ever harmed anyone intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, I just pay attention to myself for the most part. Maybe some of the people in this 70-person neighborhood don't have that mindset when you add the definition not to harm some. I don't know what some of them's thoughts are, as to how they go about their business. But, I know most of them are self-starters that made their own business.
Right.
So, I know they're successful just because of where they live and the house they live in. And, someone. Yeah, but
I'm going to go back to the story that I read. Hi, Cherry. Good to have you with us. Sherry, sorry. It's soft. It's soft, like my name is soft, Sherry. The story described how Schwab was looking for partners who weren't looking to just get rid and dump their bad businesses. He wasn't looking just for money. There was more to the investment that he saw as the final vision of the combination of these companies. And he was I read what I got out of it was he was specific about who he wanted in there. And it was these men that were amongst many sitting in that meeting the day he gave the speech. Everybody was attracted to it. Those who wanted to dump the bad businesses onto Morgan's back, because Morgan can afford it, I can just imagine the thought process that says, well, you can afford it. I'm going to dump my crap out on you so that I can be free to go. That can be harmful because that can harm the business, which can harm the hiring of people, that's not good for the ultimate health of the business that Schwab had in his mind. So that's the kind of thinking that I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, I guess you answered my question to a degree.
But that's just my view. Yeah, I think it's a great question.
Well, it just got me when you said you had met not even as many people as you could count on your both hands that had the success mindset. And then I go outside and go, gosh, when I go for my morning walk, I walk by at least 70 houses of people who are not only successful, but very successful. And this neighborhood has very low turnover. So they've been successful for a long time and continue to be. So that's what got me confused on the difference between the two.
I think it's environment and what you're seeing.
And
honestly, I could walk next to my neighbor and they're barely struggling, and the ones next to them are barely struggling. The ones across the street are doing very well. The ones next to them are doing very well. Then there's others that are about ready to lose their homes, and still others that they just don't want to talk to anybody. They have no interest in anything outside of their front door. That's just not. So yes, we are in different environments, but it's also the city that I'm in and where I'm looking at and what I was seeking out. And I've gone through, again, it's for me and what I want to surround myself with. I'm not saying that everybody I came across didn't have the success mindset. I'm talking about people that I was attracted to and wanted to have as part of my circle. I should have clarified that too.
But I also think it's what you consider success, okay? That because I was talking with on another blab last night, and I was basically saying that Van Gogh painted hundreds of paintings, and he never sold a painting. He never sold a painting. In fact, at one point, he even tried to give a painting for like a meal or whatever.
Somebody please take it.
And nobody would take it. And now his paintings sell for millions. So yes, money may be an indicator. And I think that's part of what you're saying. Money may be an indicator, but by the same token, some people may not have financial success, but they may be great artists, they may be great photographers, and things of this sort. Because I hear a lot of people say often, well, do the things you love. But sometimes the things you love may not support you financially, okay? So you end up having to do something, that brings in the money, while at the same time getting good at something that you're really passionate about. So I think it all sort of boils down to, what is your definition of success?
Yeah, I can see the successful artist. I can follow that right away. But then sometimes you kind of wonder, would they have been more successful in life if they had known the right person? I find a lot of success is knowing the right people. Maybe if he knew the right person that could sell those paintings while he was alive, he would have been successful as an artist and successful as financial too. But he didn't meet that person that could help him move there.
We're talking mindset now. We're talking mindset, and I can sort of see what you're saying in terms of maybe I need to network. Maybe I need to get out and meet more people. And, I can sort of go along with that in terms of, maybe Van Gogh didn't get out and meet as many people. But I guess the point that I'm making is that there are numerous ways of viewing success other than the big house or how much money you have. Now, I'm not saying that shouldn't be part of it. Okay, I'm not saying that shouldn't be part of it, but all I'm saying is that should not be the only criteria.
Well, there's, if you watch TV, or let's take music, for example. I think music's a very good point. There are a ton of people who can sing great. I mean, who are just as great as anyone who's being paid right now. The main difference in their life is between the fact that I guess they're a successful singer in your mode because they're great at singing. But the reason they aren't making a fantastic living like Madonna or someone else is they didn't meet that person that was able to help them get to that level. Because there are thousands of great singers.
So according to the Napoleon Hill principle, though, is that you have to be very clear that if you are good at what you do and you have a vision of being wealthy and rich doing what you want to do and love what you do, then there are some things that have to be put into place for that to happen. One of those is the belief mindset that says it really can happen. So if I have, and I have a dollar amount in my mind that I want my business to achieve in terms of revenue. And that dollar amount is very specific, followed by the plan to get there. So what Napoleon Hill is teaching us is that you have to think it first, and you have to believe that it can happen. Then it's followed by the principles that will help you to make it happen. And this one principle we're on right now is faith. And having the vision, the clarity of the vision, and the faith in something greater than yourself, whatever that term may be, that it will happen. Then putting forth some footwork that has to be in place for it to happen. And that's where I come from in the thought of the accidental success. You know, there's the ones that didn't envision any of it and suddenly found themselves in the middle of great wealth or great money being thrown at them, or the 15 minutes of fame, and they weren't ready for it.
Right.
Those who aren't ready for it collapse. Those aren't the ones I want to be around. I want to be around those who are ready for it. They don't have to have it in hand right now.
Right.
They're working towards it.
Right.
That's fine with me. And that when I look at the people that I've surrounded myself with, most of them, I mean, some of them have it now, but most of them are very clear on where they're going. They're very clear on how they're going to get there. And they're really nice people. they're really nice people, and they're great to be around because they're also very supportive of other people who want to be moving forward towards something. It's those who are, do not get me, this is me, just do not get me in a room full of people who are just going to sit and think ideas. Drives me crazy, because nobody does anything. I have sat in rooms like that over and over and over and over, and I just sit there and say, you're sucking the life out of me. Because the mindset is, oh, that's a great idea. Whoa, Lee, that's awesome. Oh, that's a better idea. Oh, let's go try that. Oh, yeah. I'm like, no, that's not who I want around me. And so once I got clear on that, then I was really able to zero in on who am I attracted to and why, and asking them basically to be a part of my inner circle.
Well, I have to go to be successful. I have to leave every morning at 8:00 and at 7:59. So I should have jumped in here. I should have jumped in here earlier. But
Gary, please do. It's every weekday morning. Yeah. Come earlier and jump on in.
Love like I said, my main question, I just was trying to understand the difference because I came in and you were at your two hands, how you could count them all. And I'm going, gosh, yeah. I think I know hundreds. So I was just trying to find that. I figured there must be a difference in what you're talking about than what I'm talking about. So that's why I jumped. That's why I asked.
Well, I enjoyed what you shared and what you asked. I'm glad you were here. Please join us again.
Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Okay. But sort of going back to what you were saying, that I title my website, The Coactive Dream, because a number of people have great ideas. And I think this was your point. A number of people have great ideas, but no execution. So in coming up with an idea, the dream, there also has to be some follow-up in terms of action.
Thank you.
There has to be some follow-up in terms of action, because how does it go? If the tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? If there's no action, nobody heard it. So yes. And that's part of what I understand in terms of you saying, I want to surround myself with people who not only have good ideas, but also the drive to make those ideas real.
So I'm going to point out, welcome, Gerald.
Good morning.
Before I shut off the recording, Why? Because I can. Just so you know,
Hey,
because I
it
can.
comes to being the host.
Yeah, I thought you'd get that. All right. So, and I'm going to wind this down for the recording.
Okay.
But ultimately, what I love where this is going is I moderate and facilitate mastermind groups
Okay.
for goal setting and accountability for the single purpose that you're in a space that you are going to be held to the goals that you set forth.
Right.
And you will come back to the group and tell us how you got there, what you achieved that week, those 2 weeks, and get it done. Get it done. So if anybody's interested, www.growbecauseyouKnow.com, up in the navigation menu is a little more information. So one more time, I'm going to shut down the recording, and then we're going to continue the discussion because it's fabulous. And I've got a good 40 minutes that I can stay here. So I want to thank everybody who's come in late, came in early, joined the conversation as we talked about Think and Grow Rich and our mindset to get us ready for the day. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. Let us go forward now with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our business.